You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
Tell you what, folks, it may be foreign in these parts, but it's sort of amazing seeing elite players make big plays at important times. Nick Alberga, Carter Hutton, the Thursday edition of Leafs Morning Take presented by Bet365. Do you get what I'm getting at with that, Huts?
I think so. I think we're talking about guys that were Leafs that making plays. I don't know, buddy. I got to keep up with you. You got a lot going on. I like your shot at the CN Tower, though. I did enjoy that. I think, you know what I mean? Let's stay, can't sell your soul here for the Oilers if you're a Leafs fan.
Huts, you know when you clog your toilet and it just won't flush? That was my mentions on Twitter yesterday because I stood up for what I believe in, and I hate the fact that they had Oilers colors on the CN Tower, which is attached to the Rogers Center, which is owned by one of the ownerships or full ownership now of the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's why I was pissed off.
Yeah.
People were coming at me, this fucking liberal province. Anyways.
You can't say anything nowadays, too.
No,
You're going to get cut down. Nothing no. Flies. The pendulum, we actually got, this is another, I got to take, dude, we got kicked off the schoolyard yesterday. My kids play after school, right? Yeah. Principal comes out and says they don't know the difference from the daycare kids to the after school kids. So you're not allowed to play. My kids play for an extra half an hour. I was like, there's got to be a healthier way we can figure something out here. But no, we have a policy now. We can't do that. Kids are let's get them home so they can be on screens. There we go. This
kumbaya shit does not work for me, and maybe I'm in the wrong province, dude. But all I said, I took to Twitter, I took to my daily podcast, and I said I thought it was stupid. I do still think it's stupid that the colors in the CN Tower were orange and blue after the Edmonton Oilers. Who in their right mind is cheering for anybody but the Maple Leafs? I don't care if the Leafs have been done for a month. I could care less. Outside of seeing McDavid and Draisaitl lift Lord Stanley, I could not care less. But no, the shot off the top. Excuse me, I can't speak today. I was going to mention first our Super Chat charity partner this season is Sick Kids. Want to make sure that your question or comment gets on the show? Hit us up with a Super Chat. Proceeds from our Super Chat will go to Sick Kids, ranked the #1 research-intensive children's hospital in Canada and third in the world. No, the shot off the top wasn't at the former Maple Leafs. It was at the star players of the Oilers making big plays, like in reference to Toronto's guys, where sure they had their moments, but I mean that's such a monster time to do something significant. And for Draisaitl to score the winner for McDavid, that tells me something.
Yeah, it does. It does. And they were buzzing all night, and it's going to be a tough series, right? You look at the way that Florida defends and the way the game's gone. But even this little passing play, the play by Perry on the wall was unbelievable, and the patience of Nugent Hopkins. And then McDavid, a little sweet sauce, and there's no doubt that thing was ending up in the back of the net. But it was good. There was honestly lots of back and forth in this game. I thought at times Florida just looked like they were overpowering the Oilers, but then at times the Oilers kind of found their game. This is going to be a chess match. This was a good start, and I feel like they really needed to win this one, the Oilers, to kind of set the tone for where they started last year, going 0-3.
That's exactly it. And to me, it was like two juggernauts going toe-to-toe, taking shot for shot. And I thought it was a wicked, wicked game one. Even the way it started, how strange it started in the first period, where it seemed like every shot was going in. And I don't know about you, I wondered about Stuart Skinner, but I will say, and I thought it was perfect that you're co-hosting today, Skinner made some big stops down 3-1 and 3-2 specifically in the second period to make sure the game didn't get out of hand. And he deserves a lot of credit. I mean, all the recognition will go to McDavid and Draisaitl, but making that next save is the important part and aspect of a hockey game.
It was, too. Honestly, when it was 3-2, I thought he made a ton of big saves in the second period that, changed the game. And for him, right, we think about a guy who's been so fragile at times, right, where it's when he starts to play bad, the wheels come right off. And then you go from the Bennett goal where, he gets hit, he can't make the save, where easily could have flustered him. They challenge it doesn't go well. And then Marchand goal, really nothing he can do. It was a world-class goal, and he gets across, and Marchand roofs it. And from there, it's you just gave up two quick goals, the lead's gone, and then to open the second period early in the period, Bennett finds the back of the net. Honestly, all that game was set up for failure for Stuart Skinner, but he stuck with it, played well. And even the visual cam of him in the crease, they show him in his mask. He just looks like he's having fun right now. He's feeling the music. He's dialed in, and it was good to watch. And that being said, Sam Bennett, another impact night, another goal, another I feel like I'm watching. I was explaining to my wife last night, we're watching the game. It was she doesn't really care about hockey. She loves hockey, but I was Sam Bennett scored again. It's a contract. I'm just trying to explain the magnitude of what he's doing right now, leading the playoffs and scoring all these goals and the money. And Oh, it's wild times right now. This is a great storyline for him.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall in that conversation, I'm sure your wife would have loved to talk Sam Bennett on a Wednesday
Hey,
night
this is
watching.
I'm just practicing. This is my livelihood now. I got to be on top of it.
Man, you are dialed in. That is for sure. And certainly we did touch on that aspect yesterday. Why should Leafs fans care about the Stanley Cup Final? Again, maybe this will go viral as well. God forbid I have opinions that differ from other people in this country. But the two big ones that stood out for me, obviously, were Connor McDavid. I think he is the pride and joy of nearby Aurora, Richmond Hill. Like, it would be cool to see McDavid win the Stanley Cup. He's far and away the best player on the planet. And the second one would be some of the guys in Florida that could entice the Maple Leafs in free agency. And again, surprise, surprise, their handprints all over game one, although they lost. But that Ekblad was engaged, played, over 30 minutes in that game. Bennett, 2 goals, leads the playoffs with 12. And Brad Marchand scores in a cup final game because, of course, Brad Marchand scores in a cup final game.
I know. He looks like he's having fun too. And I think that's going to be the interesting matchup, is that his line against Draisaitl's line, right? Because they're going to get him away from Barkov, and McDavid's going to have the toughest matchup. So there is that game of chess, with that last change at home. But that being said, like, tons of storylines last night. Bobrovsky was awesome as well. Like the Arvidsson goal, like, they were kind of critical of him,
Yeah.
but it's through a screen. It breaks off him. It's not a horrible goal, but it's a goal where you need to block a little bit. And I thought there was a ton of cool shots of him. Even the Bouchard save he made from the point, that view from behind the goal line where it's like you don't see him, then all of a sudden he shifts into it. His movement's so good. This is impressive hockey, and it's going to be a deep run here because it looks like both these teams are deep. And I don't think the Florida Panthers are going to go away by any means.
I was going to ask you, like, I've been saying for maybe 3 months, even leading back to last summer, I feel like the Oilers are a team of destiny, and I think they're going to win the Stanley Cup this year. I don't want to differ from your opinion and lead you down a path and lead the witness, but how do you feel about this series? Any different than you did prior to game one?
No, I don't feel any different. I feel like it's going to be like a shot for shot kind of series, right? And I did take the Oilers beforehand. I took the Oilers at the start of the season, which didn't look great at times, and I took the Oilers before this in 6. But like, in that sense, I just don't feel like there's going to be easy games, right? Where last year, remember the one game they ended up 8-3 or 9-3 where Stolarz went out to the Leafs, but he ended up playing in that game. And I just don't know if you're going to see a lot of that, where it just seems like these teams defend so well. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to Bowman, to Stan Bowman, the guys that he brought in. Like, I mean, he made a lot of little moves that are like made this team so much better. But my perspective going into this series was the fact that you have Connor McDavid, you have Leon Draisaitl. They're back in the Stanley Cup Final with experience. I just don't see them falling behind 0-3. And these two guys are too good to not have moments like last night where they put the team on their shoulder and they find a way to win games.
I love the composition of that Oilers roster. I thought that was a strong point of this team, was the depth that they acquired last summer. And they took a lot of scrutiny for getting rid and throwing guys overboard in the offer sheet scandal with St. Louis, and Ryan McLeod goes to Buffalo. But everybody's slotted in the perfect position, not to mention the blue line. Guys are elevating, like John Klingberg. I know I gave the guy heat the last couple of years, but he appears healthy. He's playing well. The Jake Wallman pickup has been incredible. Yes. He has been a stud. Evan Bouchard. It's like the Morgan Rielly conversation here in Toronto. If you do something and show me something in the Stanley Cup playoffs, I'll forget everything or how dog shit you looked in the regular season. He has been so good. Everybody's dialed in, and I feel like they're playing like a cohesive unit. In the past, it's been McDavid, Draisaitl, and everybody else. I don't get that feeling anymore with the Oilers.
No, I agree. And there is depth, and there is like knowing your role. But that being said, health is important too. Where we look back at last year, Leon was not healthy. Evander Kane, I think, was a big piece coming in. And then the fact that like getting Matthias Ekholm back at a time where he got one game in, and last night he was really good. And I think he's only going to get better. So there is depth, there is a challenge. And then Corey Perry, like the ageless wonder, right? Like what he continues to do, he plays in those hard areas where, again, I think you could have Corey Perry for another few years. And in the regular season, he may be non-existent, but this time of year, it's his bread and butter because that's where he earns his money. It's in front of the net and down low on the walls.
It's still wild to me that dude is 40, and I thought it was kind of comical and funny. The first 12 minutes, he was in the box 3 times, serving 1 penalty, taking 2 of his own. But that's sort of what you acquire in bringing in a Corey Perry, and he just has a DNA of a winner. I know he's only won once and lost 5 straight Stanley Cup Finals, but he makes big plays, and not to mention he got the secondary apple on the OT winner on the power play. And to be 40 and to have that type of role, have 7 goals here in the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's damn impressive. But I just like the mentality of where this Oilers team is at. But to your point, I expect a response from the Florida Panthers.
Yes.
These guys are gamers. They're resilient. And they're not phased. Like, even watching Paul Maurice and his remarks and Sam Bennett after the game, they're like, okay, on to the next one. And that's the way you sort of have to handle a best-of-7 series. You're not going to have it every night. They didn't have their best last night. The Oilers grab an important game 1. But, yeah, I expect a response in game 2 tomorrow night.
And I think that's important, too. Like, I listened to Matthias Ekholm talk after the game, and his comments were about, like, if he was on the other side of that OT loss, and now he would just be talking about flushing. And this is a guy, this is his third Stanley Cup final as well, right? He went with the Preds. He went last year with the Oilers. He's a veteran guy. He understands it. I played with him for 3 years, a good locker room guy. And now you have McDavid and Draisaitl, who's been to a cup now, right? There's so much value in that experience. And again, even like Skinner talked last night about that, where they have the Stanley Cup out on the ice. And he saw it last year. He was like a little overwhelmed by the moment and seeing the Stanley Cup and being a little googly-eyed about it, where now it's like you have that experience. And I think that's so important for this team here as they move forward.
Yeah, it really is impressive. And I think you look up and down this roster, even in Evander Kane, who didn't play all season long, enters for the Stanley Cup playoffs. And Little Birdie tells me that he's likely to be dealt this summer. I think there's going to be so many teams interested, especially if Evander Kane continues to play this way. He's been a force. And that was my wonder going into this Cup final. Granted, it's one game, the physical aspect. And I thought Edmonton took it to Florida physically in game 1, which is surprising.
Yeah, it was. There's a lot of hits, right? And you're going to see that and the wear and tear throughout a series. But those big bodies now have so much value, right? The Evander Kane. And if there's anything that the league has taught us over the last few years, it's this time of year, you need those bodies. You need the Sam Bennett's, the Evander Kanes, and just to wear a team down in a series, right? And when you look at a team like Florida, who's going to have Seth Jones, you're going to have Ekholm, Forsling, guys that are going to play a lot of minutes, just continually pounding them. Even like Nate Schmidt. I thought Nate Schmidt was really good last night.
Yeah.
But a smaller body where if you can lay into him, then all of a sudden you get the game 6, game 7, there might be a little bit of wear and tear, or like even the Hyman injury, right, is a kind of an innocent play. Marshman cuts across, catches him. He dislocates his wrist. But like those are things that happen when you – not that you're trying to target and hurt guys, but at the end of the day, if you hurt a guy and someone else, less of a player, has to come in, that's the war of attrition that you're in the Stanley Cup Finals.
And all I'll say to finish on our conversation about the Stanley Cup Final is Kasperi Kapanen. He looked like the Kasperi Kapanen who started his Maple Leafs career and started his NHL career. He was buzzing, using his strength, his speed. And when you have supplementary pieces like that playing that way, you are going to be very, very difficult to beat. And I think Kapanen deserves a lot of credit. Just look at the different guys they've infiltrated on their roster. Adam Henrique, Kapanen, as mentioned, even like a Trent Frederick, who they picked up. It seems like everything's coming together at the right time. And now we await the response from the Florida Panthers, where it's like the margin for error is razor thin, man, in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And it's like Thomas Nosek takes a puck over glass penalty in OT, and that's going to bite you in the ass when you give Edmonton a power play. 4 power plays in a game, they're ultimately going to score at least once, you would think.
Yeah, that just can't happen, right? It's just a bad play. It's got to be off the wall and out. And that being said, about those perimeter players that are playing so well, those little extra additions are so important. But again, when we look at like tying this back into the Leafs, when you have guys like McDavid and Draisaitl that are playing that well, it like drags those guys into it, because it's like the best players in the world, they're going, they're flying. It makes you perform better. Where when you look at the run where, Matthews isn't scoring, if Nylander's not, Marner, whatever situation's going on with that team, it's hard for the other guys to carry the mail, right? Your big guys have to be your big guys, and it takes pressure off those guys because you're getting better matchups everywhere else. But it's going to be this series is far from over.
I agree. And I know you're a big golf guy. I don't know if you caught this, but the Canadian Open happening here in nearby Toronto this week. And Rory McIlroy had a famous quote yesterday. I guess he got a Leafs jersey from Keith Pelly, who was in attendance here at the Canadian Open. But he says, if I can win the Masters, then the Leafs can win the Stanley Cup. You sure about that, Rory?
That's sick, though. I love it. I love that he got a Leafs jersey. I wonder if he kept it. I wonder if he cares. Truthfully, he says that, but I agree. Anything's possible. I didn't think for a guy that chokes as much as he has at Augusta, to pull through and find a way to win, you never know, right? But that was obviously a cool gesture by Pelly and the MLSE.
Gives me hope for sure. And that was an incredible story, last month, to see McIlroy finally win the Masters. And because you could tell it was eating away at him. And to that point, watching Edmonton specifically you could tell how big that win was. Just the reaction of Draisaitl after, subdued, but like, when a guy goes like that, like, yeah, we got one. Like, I think they understood the importance. And yeah, we all hope what McIlroy says is true, but I'll see it when I believe it. I always laugh when they give away jerseys, like especially Taylor Swift. How many jerseys do you think Taylor Swift's been given in her life? Not to compare her to Rory McIlroy, but this guy's done a bunch of different golf tournaments and events, and I'm sure he's been given jerseys left and right. Do these people actually keep these jerseys? Is my question.
I don't know. Certain guys, maybe like Dirk Bentley. I know he loves hockey, big hockey guy. But certain artists, I'm sure it just goes in a drawer or they just raffle it off or give it away. Because you see all these concerts where they come out with whatever team jersey. That's what the CN Tower did. Whatever color it needed to be, they'll fit the mold. And I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I'm sure for some of these people, they could care less about hockey.
For the record, did you agree with our take yesterday on the CN Tower?
Yeah, I do. Like, I don't know, like, I read a few of the comments. I usually don't read the comments, but it is a federal building, right? So is it run by like the government account? But I agree, it's just like the temple. It's Toronto, right? You see the CN Tower, like Edmonton can light up whatever they want, but if like the Leafs are in it, like from your perspective, right? Like if the Leafs are in it, nobody from Montreal, nobody from out west, everyone wants the Leafs to lose. Nobody wants to see the Leafs win a cup outside of like us, people that cheer for them.
Yeah,
that's my take.
Yeah, I couldn't believe the blowback on that tweet, man. I got people coming after me and calling
that's why
me
you
names.
do it, but you got to rock the boat. You got to rock.
Dude, I spent half my Wednesday night blocking people on Twitter. I love the block function, man. It's something that's come into my life maybe the last 8 to 12 months, and Rosie always laughs, but I'm like, dude, there's something fulfilling about blocking somebody on X, because you know what? They come back around the well. They realize we have a Leafs podcast. They want information. They want to watch some good shit. And they can't see my content anymore. But that's what you get when you're a piece of shit. Sorry. Anyways, we got Blake Wheeler, former Jets captain, on today's show. I enticed him to come on. I said, we're going to play B-roll of you scoring on Carter Hutton. We're going to analyze the plays. So
he probably did. He for sure scored on me. I don't know how many.
I only managed to find a picture of him scoring on you in Buffalo. He scored an OT winner, I believe, as a Winnipeg Jet.
Oh, man.
There's a picture I got.
Yeah, it's probably the. I do. I think it was in Buffalo. He scored. We might have lost 2-1. I don't know if it was in. I know what you're talking about, though. God damn it, Nick. You and your research. But yeah, I played a ton against him because I played in the Central Division for so long. I did 3 years in Nashville and then 2 years in St. Louis. So there's 5 years in the Central Division where I faced him a lot, and I felt like I played a ton of games in Winnipeg. My first ever win actually was in Winnipeg. We won 3-1, my first career win. And Evander Kane got one late on me. It was like a rebound. He when it's at the post and he kept jamming that and got one. So I was as close as I came to a shutout in Winnipeg.
And producer Vic protecting you. It was a 2-1 goal and a 3-1 victory for Winnipeg. It wasn't an OT winner, so my mistake.
Yeah, I didn't think it was. Usually I remember the OT winners. My favorite OT story, though, Alex Steen scored an OT winner on me. And
future GM of the St. Louis Blues, Alex Steen.
Yeah. So I was in Nashville. He scored an OT winner against me. I was 0-5 against St. Louis in my career. I have no idea why they fucking signed me. They're like, this guy's 0-5 against us. Let's pick him up. I guess if he beats everyone else and he's not on our team, he'll do well. And at the start of every overtime, they would show highlights of like overtimes in the past. And it was Alex Steen scoring on me. And I was like, guys, like I'm on the fucking team now. Like, why are we showing me getting scored on? Can we like maybe show a different overtime goal?
Yeah, I mean, that happens on a daily basis over here at the Leafs Nation. We're tagged in tweets from company accounts where I'm like, what the hell are we doing here? But I think you just have to accept it. By the way, speaking of acceptance, people in the chat wondering about this tweet. Well, at TLNDC, where you can follow on Twitter, at the Golden Muzzy. What's yours? Carter Hutton 4 on Twitter. You can follow along, but it was pretty much just a tweet that I subtweeted the CN Tower yesterday. And I thought it was dumb. I just said, I think it's dumb that they're coloring it in Oilers colors. That's about it. Then I put the video from the podcast yesterday, so you can go and check that out. Anyways, Blake Wheeler's coming up in about 5 minutes here at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget, to check out the LeafsNation.com. So I managed to get confirmation last night that the Maple Leafs do in fact have interest in signing Jonathan Toews. How do you feel about that?
I like it. He's a guy that doesn't need the dough. He wants the opportunity. He's a leader. He's going to buy in. He's going to take any role that he can. I got a chance to play with Jonathan Toews in Chicago. I got to know him. He's a unique individual. He's into a lot of different stuff that normal hockey players aren't, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. And I think this journey, like, he's been through so much, right? And I feel like now stepping away from the game and him actually wanting to come back, he's going to have a fire lit under his ass that he wants to play well. He wants to be part of it. And I think he's a good fit, right? He's a guy that, and if it doesn't work out, I think it's like a low risk situation where I feel like he's going to take a team friendly number. He's going to want to be there. You have some veteran guys. And again, a Canadian guy that I feel like would love to try to win a Stanley Cup in Canada. And he's won a few of them.
I still think he's earmarked for the Winnipeg Jets. I think it's awesome.
It would make more sense, right?
It would. I mean, I think it's cool the Leafs are involved. And as far as I know, there's a lot of teams interested, clearly. But, I mean, you still have to have the aspect of he hasn't played an NHL game in over 2 years and he is 37.
Yeah.
I mean, to think that Jonathan Toews, the guy who won three Stanley Cups and this and that, is going to be that Toews. You can't get to that level. I mean, what's reasonable to suggest? A fourth line player, maybe third line if he gets up to snuff again?
And to take that time off and try to turn it back on is no joke, right? Like, I even look at my last year after ankle surgery and being kind of shut out for a while and not on the ice, and then trying to get back my last year to health was crazy, right? He's had a lot of time off. He is a fitness freak, I will say that. You ever heard of the ARP machine? They were big into that ARP. So it's like a stim unit you hook on your body and you train with it on. And then there's like, every trainer in the NHL hates it, but there was like this big cult of guys, Winnipeg, Minnesota, that used it when I was on the Hawks. And I remember him always saying that there was like effects from using that throughout his career. But that being said, he's in unbelievable shape at all times. So, you know, if there's a guy that can do it, it's him. And he's smart enough probably to work his way into the lineup and the way he plays. But that being said, I wouldn't get my hopes up for a 37-year-old who's been on the shelf for so long to be that big of an impact player.
Yeah, I always wonder when guys get to work out when you're playing. Like, I know when I go in the Leafs room after the game, they're lifting weights, but what kind of workouts are guys doing throughout the season? You're burning so many calories on a daily basis, no?
Yeah, like, so if you get 2 days off between a practice and a game, like, you will have a normal workout, but not like a real workout. Like, when I'm talking about a workout, I mean, it's like a 15-minute, like 3 sets. And then what they'll do after the game is just a little bit of mobility and a little bit of strength, depending on how many minutes you play. There's kind of like a fine line where guys that are over the 20 minutes, it's more like free reign to do whatever you need. But if you don't play that next day, you're going to do a little bit. It's more about maintenance at this point, right? You're just trying to maintain your body. You're trying to do little things. And then it becomes a unique twist on, like, for me, as a goalie, I was doing different things than I would be doing like a defenseman, right? You look at a Brandon Tanev or a Chris Tanev, or you look at like Jake McCabe, like, they're battling net front with guys. So they're working on different things than like an Anthony Stolarz is. So it becomes very specialized to your thing. This time of year, it's mostly about staying healthy and energy levels being peaked at the right time.
In support of Sick Kids, the Dream End sends us a super chat. Really appreciate this relating to Toews. Maybe he can be part of the DNA change. That's a good point. I think we're all looking and pondering what a DNA change looks like in Toronto. I think adding a Jonathan Toews would definitely help, but it's got to be a variety of different aspects, and it's got to be some guys going overboard too, if you get my drift. Yeah,
for sure, right? And again, I do think the DNA has changing too, but at the end of the day, like, is he the Corey Perry-ish kind of player? Like, is he going to be enough in hard areas? Like, yes, he's in a good situation. Obviously, Perry, we're playing on the line that he's playing on, but I do think there's a chance. And for me, I just think the risk is so low not to try to get a guy like that can have an impact player, especially he can play up the middle. He can work the walls. He is a grinder. And I don't really, again, he would be a player I would care less about how his regular season goes. I would just be like, okay, it's playoff time. We need you to be tough in those areas.
Well, that's the other thing, you know, watching the Stanley Cup Final keeps coming up, and I know he's a free agent, but Sam Bennett finally eclipses like 50 points. Like, he's a 50-point player.
I know.
And so I think it would be so difficult to quantify the value in free agency or trade-wise for guys who, you know, will be such great additions in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I know we like to celebrate regular season success, but I agree. A guy like Toews, I don't think you're going to weight him on production, but his value is extreme in the play. Like, even Brad Marchand is a guy. I know there's been rumors that he's going to get around $8 million or could get around $8 million. I think he's worth every penny, because you watch him in a playoff game. You talk about guys looking nervous and being nervous. Brad Marchand is the chillest guy, and it's like the Stanley Cup Final game 1, and you're playing Connor McDavid. Nothing bothers the guy. He just wants to talk about ice cream.
I know. Yeah, he's a nail gun. And it takes time. It takes experience. It takes a lot. But Brad Marchand is a different animal. And it feels like since that World Cup, when they won that one, his career's just gone. Not that he wasn't good at that point, but he was always kind of an
the
outside.
next step. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like where he really just went from like this really good, like second, third line checker odd score to like an elite guy. And his skill and stick work is unbelievable. What I love about Brad Marchand is the fact that he goes to those tough areas. Like even last night, it was like the first shift of the game. And was it Nurse? He was like punching him in the groin, like against the wall. The camera was
he's giving him body shots.
Yeah, he's like giving him body shots. And I love it. He's just like a dog, right? There's no turning that guy off. And he's just wired. And that being said, there is value there because these are guys that, you know, regular season aside, you need come playoff time, and they drag guys into the fight. And I'm telling you, that is one of the most important factors in this series and the playoffs is like those perimeter guys that aren't your stars, but they just drag you into the fight. They make it hard on the other team and they make it easier on your players.
Without question. And I noticed that too, but I think Nurse started that with the body blow. So Marchand's like, it's free season here. Because if you notice, there wasn't a penalty called after the first period. And when there was, it was puck over glass. So it's pretty black and white in that call with Thomas Nosek in OT. But I just noticed just the difference in style and play in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And again, from a Maple Leafs perspective, it just seems to be night and day. And I watched Brad Marchand, I watched Sam Bennett, and Ekblad's at war last night with Corey Perry. Like, that is playoff hockey to me, Huts.
It is. It's a tough area. And it's funny when I watch that stuff, how like removed I was as a goalie, right? I'm like, if anyone touched me, it was like the end of the world. And I got these big D-men sticking up for me and I could say whatever, but you have to be like in a mindset too, where you're non-reactive to like stuff. But at the same time, these guys are nail guns come playoff time.
At the Leafs Nation 401, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. The following interview is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Get custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece program and an unbeatable pricing policy. Charm Diamond Centers is proudly Canadian owned and operated since 1972 with more than 85 locations across the country through Charm and their sister brands. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. As we bring in the former captain of the Winnipeg Jets, former NHLer, turned media member, it's Blake Wheeler. What's going on, Blake?
Hey, what's going on, guys? How we doing?
We're doing great. I talked about Huts and the fact that I brought you on. I wanted to show some goals. We only have a picture of you scoring on Huts. But do you remember playing Carter Hutton or what?
Yeah, they didn't have. Oh yeah, there's a
we do have video. Okay.
I was gonna say it was so long ago they didn't have highlights.
It's got to be a screen or something. I probably didn't see
yeah, right.
that seems more likely. Oh, what were you supposed to do there?
Oh, off my angle or something, eh? They'll find a way to chirp me in the chat. Don't worry, Wheels.
Those are the best ones too. I'll take a few more of those. I'll tell you that.
Hey, I hate goalies, so anytime I can get Huts, man, I just got to get him. But Blake, thank you so much for doing this today. We were just discussing sort of the DNA of being a winner and playing in important games, and I'm sure you got a chance to catch game one of the Stanley Cup Final. Just we've had a lot of conversation about some of these Panthers who are free agents. I just think adding guys like that would do so much to the Maple Leafs roster. Would you agree?
Well, I think, I'm sure the guys you're touching on, that they're going to be very attractive come free agency time for good reason. I mean, those guys have had a ton of success. Anytime you're in 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals, you've done something right. You found, a winning recipe. And I think what Paul Maurice has enabled that lineup to do, I mean, they play playoff hockey. They play north-south. They play hard. They play heavy. I'm sure Sam Bennett's a guy that a lot of people in Toronto would love to see as their, number 2 center. And guess what? So would, about 30 other teams. So he's established himself as kind of the marquee guy for that role, that fit. He's just tough to play against. He's a big time player. He shows up in these big moments. And I think guys of that sort of makeup, this is their time to shine this time of year.
Blake, watching the finals and obviously seeing the Oilers DNA and the Panthers and the way these teams are built, like how far off do you think a team like the Leafs are? Because you obviously have the stars, you have a lot of good goaltending, you have a lot. How do you get to that next level of, making a team that's a little more complete to compete for a Stanley Cup?
Well, I think they did a lot of really good things. I think first and foremost, you have to look at the back end and look at the way the Florida Panthers are built. I mean, they're long, they're rangy, they're big. When you're playing a team, potentially 7 times in like 2.5 weeks, and most of their defensemen are 6'4" and have long sticks. It makes it tough. It makes it tough to play against. So I think the Leafs they checked that box, at least they did last year with some of the guys that they added to their lineup. So then it's just a matter of like, how do you supplement? I think a lot of things like how they played with Berube, I think that was a step in the right direction. I think that there's a lot of buy-in. Certainly those guys, they seem to like, his message really resonates with them. So, I think what we're talking about now is how are you filling out the rest of your lineup? What does that look like? And there's a lot of big question marks around that team this summer of, certainly Austin Matthews is going to be the guy that you're building around. So what's the lineup look like with him as the guy, the focal point? How do you make that lineup one where, they're right there last year. I mean, and how do you help take that next step?
So the big word for us, or me specifically, not to speak for Huts, is identity. And I can't say watching the Maple Leafs, I know what their identity is. I know what they're trying to teach or approach. And, we talk about DNA change, but what does that look like for you, Blake, moving forward for this Maple Leafs team and try to reimagine the roster moving forward too?
Well, it's hard because you don't know what the message is in the room. I mean, you can assume sort of what's being talked about. You can assume, what where they want to get to. I mean, you look back at when they won the Stanley Cup in St. Louis with Berube as the head coach, and certainly that's probably what they want to get back to. Now they don't have quite the same makeup as that team, so you're not really sure with the with the bodies that they have, what they want to get to. Everyone in the league, it's a copycat league, so everyone's going to want to try to build the next Florida Panthers. That's what typically happens. And you look at the Edmonton Oilers, that they don't really have the same makeup as, as Florida, but I think they have gotten to the point where like their top guys now are bought into playing a 200-foot game, a playoff style game. So identity wise, the most important thing when it comes to identity is that whatever the message is, you get buy-in from your top guys. So as long as whatever message is being sold by the coaching staff, you have buy-in from first and foremost Austin Matthews, it's going to trickle down. Like that is the paramount number one most important thing. And I think it looked like they had that last year. I mean, we're talking about this team a lot differently had, like the last 10 days of their season gone differently. So they're right there.
And I think that's so important too, right? And Blake, you've been on teams, I'm sure I've been on teams where it's like the message from the coach and then the coach leaves and you got guys that are kind of undermining it. And that's so important. And that being said, you played against a lot against him in the Central Division, Jonathan Toews, right? I played against him a ton. His name is out there. Is this a guy that, you think there's enough left at 37 to come back and play? Because there is talk of him maybe being a fit for the Leafs. I know he possibly might be a Winnipeg guy, but that being said, he's a very valuable person.
That's just going to be a name that's going to be incredibly attractive based off of, his track record, his success, the quality of player he is. You look at a lot of teams, kind of like we talked about Sam Bennett earlier, that second line center is such a valuable piece to like a winning team. And when you have teams that are, right on the edge of potentially being contenders for winning it all, that's a name that's going to potentially, have a huge boost to your lineup. What he has left, it's hard to say. It's been 2 years. So it's going to be really hard to know, what it looks like in an NHL game situation. He strikes me as the type of guy who's, once he goes all in, like he's all in. So can he do it? There's no reason to believe he can't do it. I think that it may take him a little bit of time, 25 games, to kind of like get back to like NHL top, form. I think he's capable of it, and it's going to be really interesting where he lands and kind of how that fit goes moving forward.
Wheels, the pandemic affected us all differently. Full disclosure, I was a Leafs radio host during the pandemic. The North Division, do you still get North Division PTSD? I remember even just being a broadcaster covering that fucking division every night. It was the same damn teams. What was it like to play in that division?
I could take that a few different ways. Do you mean PTSD?
No, just in general, of like it was such a weird time to be a hockey fan, right? Like you're just playing the same teams every game, Yeah,
I would say our challenge in that division, there were a few of them. I would say first and foremost with like the restrictions in Canada, it made it a little bit more challenging. I mean, when you're looking around at colleagues in other markets in the league and they're able to kind of live their life in a lot of ways, and it's 75 or 80 degrees in February, and we couldn't like I couldn't have a teammate over to my room for a beer after the game, like, you know what I mean? So it was just kind of like there's PTSD from that for sure. And then when speaking for myself, like you played Toronto 9 times, you played Edmonton, I think 9 times. So I think I was minus a lot that year. And it was like, I remember having to answer a couple of questions like that. And I'm like, what are you expecting? I don't know what you're expecting me. That's almost 20, half our schedule against the top scorers in the league. So, yeah, that was an interesting year for sure. And at the end of the day, it was great that we were able to get a season in and make something out of kind of a messy situation. But yeah, there's residual there.
Yeah, playing through that was obviously unique. I do miss a good hotel room hot stove though on the road with the boys, having a few beers after the game. I think I'm a house cat now with my wife and kids. But that being said, you obviously played a ton of games against the Leafs, and what was it like playing against like an Austin Matthews or like a player like Mitch Marner, who's very like, it's polarizing in the media. People love him, people hate him. Should he walk? Like, what was it like playing against that core four in Toronto? So many times.
Dangerous. They were a threat at all times. It was always a game where you had to be careful. You didn't want to give them too many power plays. For whatever reason, it always seemed like we would play really well in Toronto and Toronto would play really well in Winnipeg. There's always a special buzz in our building in Winnipeg when Toronto would be in town in particular. Those are always fun, really fun games. And they always played super well against us at home. And, it's just, when you're out on the ice with that caliber of player, you just can't fall asleep. You have to know they're out there. You make any sort of bad decisions, bad plays is going to end up in your net. And that North Division we experienced that, but those guys are world-class. They're world-class players. Whether that core four stays together or not, I mean, individually you strip them apart, like they're all world-class players, have a place, in any lineup in the league. It's just a matter of, I think, when you're talking about like a team and building a team, does that core four work together in the most beneficial way? That's probably the question. And like I said, you each individual part, there's a ton of value, for any team in the league.
And Wheels, not to open up old wounds, like in Winnipeg, do you feel like there was a sense of relatability with your team and the Maple Leafs just because of what you guys had been through? Like, even for example, it's so tough for me to watch Connor Hellebuck sometimes because he's so damn good and the guy just wins and wins and wins. And just the playoffs is a different, animal altogether. And I just think it shows you how truly hard it is to win in this league. And obviously this market's going to blow people up like we do in Toronto.
It's hard. It's kind of that catch-22 of playing in a Canadian market, because what a gift it is to play all your home games in front of people who not only know a ton about hockey, but they love the game as well. I always thought it was such a gift. And then to your point, I mean, it gets to a point where it gets hard. It gets hard where, especially I think my experience was as my kids were getting older, and now I was out in the community more, just byproduct of being at their games, being at their practices. Now you're exposed to things that maybe you were sheltered from when you didn't have kids, or when your kids were super young. You kind of pick and choose, how and when you were in the community. People's intentions are so great. Like I said, they genuinely love the game, but I think those two markets, what better place to win than in markets like that, where people, they literally live this stuff. I mean, it's, we're talking Leafs right now. Their season's been over for, just over a month, and people just love it. So I think it's great. And I think that's why, and I'll speak for Winnipeg in particular, I think that's why their track record of retaining their players is so high, because the guys genuinely love playing in front of that community. Those people, they love the team so much. It's so fun to play in those types of markets.
Yeah, it's so important too. I feel like throughout my career, right? Early, in my days, Florida was brutal, right? You go to Florida, nobody's there. And then you go to a place like Winnipeg, where I played a lot of games in that Central. It's it really makes you feel like you're in the NHL, right? And I felt that way. In Nashville, I was so protected, right? We didn't have to deal with media. We got good fans, but nobody cared. Preds win, Preds lose, whatever. Let's hit Broadway. And then I went to Buffalo, and I was getting death threats after games, getting booed off it was a different challenge, right? And then I switched over to media. now I've been doing this for a few years, and I found it tricky, right? Because I'm being critical of guys, and you've had some tough goes with media, good and bad, right? You know, being in Winnipeg. What's it like now on the other side? Like, do you have more respect for it, or is it like a unique? Because I found it tough to be hard on guys that I played with.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think players can respect fair. You know, I think if you're just able to be like clear and not personal and just like call it as you see it, I think that players can respect like a fair take on things. Where I would, you know, admittedly, the way I played the game, it was so challenging for me, like 5 minutes after a game to now like take that hat off and be like a civilian and be like, I guess what like a gentleman after the game. I was trying to like win so hard and like do anything, and I hated everyone that we were playing against. I just had that like mentality the whole game, and so now you take your skates off. It took me a while to like calm down. So it's been fun to, you know, like be able to play in this space, and everyone that I've done this stuff with has been super cool and super helpful and so professional. And I've really enjoyed it. I mean, what better thing than to talk hockey? Like it's what I miss the most about the game is being in the locker room with the boys on the plane, just talking about the game. So I've had a blast being able to do that and kind of just, you know, talk about the game again.
Yeah, well, I will say you're both killing it. I've had the luxury over my 15-year career to work with a lot of former players, and once they get in the seat, they're like, "Shit, this is kind of different, but it's kind of cool. It's unique, isn't it?"
It's super unique, and that's kind of, you know, what I just touched on is I love the game. I didn't quite love playing it as much anymore at the end. It just gets hard and all these different things. And I think what really stood out for me when I got hurt at the end of my time in New York, and I wasn't playing anymore, but I was still like in it with the team. Like we were on a playoff run. I was around the boys. I was kind of like doing what we're doing right now, but I just wasn't out there. And that sparked something in me of, wow, I still love this game. It's just the playing part of it isn't quite there like it used to be. So that was kind of like a moment where I was like, okay, well, it's not the game. It's just my role in the game is changing now. So
Yeah.
It's been super fun to kind of re-engage.
It's funny you say that too, because I won't list names, but a bunch of current and former players reach out to me or just want to talk the game, man. And some guys like you guys like translate it to being in media. I know it's difficult, but just that transition is important following your playing days. I wanted to leave you with this question. We love Craig Berube here at Leafs One Take, whether it's me, Hutz, Jay Rosehill. Do you think the Leafs are on the right track now under Berube?
I don't think there's any question. You know, I think everything you hear about him around the league is his players just love playing for him. And even just how he operates in the media, how he talks, he's well calculated. And we talked about this a little bit earlier here, is the most important thing for a head coach is that your players are bought into what your system and, you know, kind of like what you're selling. And that team to me looked like they were bought in. It was year one of like a transition to a new coach. It takes time sometimes. I mean, it took them time to like kind of have it click. And when it clicked, like they were taking steps in the right direction. So there's no question they have the coach, and it'll be really interesting to see how you know, his system, his culture sort of starts to really be incorporated in year two.
Blake, this is me not kissing ass, but you've been one of my favorite players over, say, like the last decade. And I think I look at this Maple Leafs roster, I wish we had more guys who hated to lose like you. So appreciate your time today, and we'll talk soon, okay?
All right, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks,
Anytime. Blake. That is former Jets captain Blake Wheeler, wears his heart on his sleeve. And I loved watching him play, man. Just an animal, dogged determination, had speed, and was a captain too, and handled it pretty well in Winnipeg. I felt.
Yeah, he was a great captain, great player, great career. Obviously, doing a good job on this other side of it too, his analyzation. And I think the point that sticks with me the most is when he talks about leadership and he talks about communication and team and coaching, and it's got to go together. It's got to be in sync. And at times, it felt like communication between Keefe and the team wasn't there. I don't think he had the total buy-in, where I do believe now with Chief, there is a total buy-in, and there is the communication is better and strong. It's like a respect factor. And I think having him there, and yeah, it's great. I honestly, he was a great interview and a hell of a player. That's for sure.
Yeah, I thought so as well. Slayer Stream's writing in one of the best guests yet. I think so. I think he spoke from the heart. And, as somebody who found you, a lot of people don't know that. I'm sort of the founder of Carter Hutton. I think you can just tell when somebody has it or they have that passion or they can relay their thoughts into words. I think he's a natural.
Yeah.
I think obviously with some reps, he's going to get stronger and stronger. But I think there's a lot of guys in general who don't comprehend or understand what they have in them post-career. Like, you can speak to this. You're sort of lost when you've retired. But I think a lot of guys have the gift for the gab in the way they describe and handle the game and see the game. And I think it relates to the screen or the radio.
Yeah, it is. It's important too. And again, I think different roles throughout a team have different perspectives. You have a captain, you have a guy who's a leader who, vocal. And then like you always see more people in media that are goalies as well too, I think, because we have a different perspective, because like your whole life you watch the game, whether you were playing or you're on the bench. Like, it's a different perspective than a guy that's playing forward or D. So there's such a unique ability in this game, and the way the perspective and the way you process things, where you talk about Blake being like, he was had that win at all costs, and he was a killer instinct, right? Where I was super emotional on games, but then I had to get that out of my game and be more passive and just calm, whether it was good or bad, where, there's different ways to play a game. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat when it comes to a hockey game. So it's always unique hearing guys that played in the league. And not that I discredit people that didn't play, because it's nice to hear outside perspective, but at times there is always that different variable for me of hearing guys that played in a different position than I did.
Meantime, want to get in the action for Stanley Cup playoffs at Bet365. They got you from game props, player props, totals, and the money line, whatever your bet is. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 19 or older. Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, visit connexontario.ca. Since you won't be here tomorrow, anything you like for Game 2 betting-wise of the Cup Final?
I would take the under in the next one. I don't know why. I just think it's going to get jammed up. It's going to be more predictable. That would be my bet. I'm going to take it, obviously, because I do my daily face-off starting goalies bet. We swept yesterday. I took first goal, and I took the Oilers money line. But I think if I would take under, and I would lean a little more toward the Panthers money line tomorrow.
I had a little shot prop that I cooked up 5 minutes before the game, and it hit. It was like plus 1,200. I had some Marchand in there. I had some Corey Perry. I had some Sam Reinhart, Evan Bouchard. Guy was horny to shoot the puck last night. He had 7 shots on goal, so I cleared that really, really quickly. The only thing I missed was Oilers in regulation. I hit them on the live line down 3-2, so I got the value back there. But, it'll be interesting to see what happens here in Game 2 tomorrow night. And in general, the Maple Leafs perspective, like, it's going to be a vital next month, and how we see this roster in a month kind of intrigues me. I want to know who they add,
I know. I agree. And you look at these teams that are winning this time of year, and you look at some of those additions they've made, and it's like, why not us, right? It feels very capable, right? We have the star power. We have the, and if the cap space is there to just, and it's not even cap space. It's just like the right guys at the right time. It's such a unique situation, but it definitely feels possible. And I do like the fact that where we're at with Tree and Chief right now. Like, I feel like they're working in unison to try to build something for next year based on what they felt this year and what they're seeing.
I almost begrudgingly watched Game 1, where I was like, man, and I know people hate that we try to attach the Leafs to everything, but they had Florida on the ropes and they let them back in, and now the Panthers are in the Cup Final. Just to imagine a Leafs-Edmonton Cup Final, it does hurt. But Huts, great stuff today. Should tee up tomorrow. Rosie and I caught up with Easton Cowan yesterday afternoon, awesome. So we're going to play that interview on tomorrow's show, and we're going to wrap another week. Rosie back in the mix tomorrow. But great job today, bud.
That's it. Thanks for having me, buddy. I always love being on, and great interview. I look forward to hearing the interview tomorrow.
A lot of people during that interview, I don't know if they're focused on the interview or what the fuck's on your hat and Blake's hat. Like, there's an onion, there's a potato on your hat, I guess.
No, mine's a cactus, man. It's a cactus with golf balls in it, and it's a Arizona Golf Company.
Okay.
I don't know. His is probably a golf hat, too. We're just hockey players. We play golf. What else are we going to do?
Yeah. I only wear Greta hats. I only wear Leafs Nation hats. That's about it. So,
you know what? I worked out before. I had a quick shower. I didn't have time to do my hair, so we just went with the hat.
Who's the most fit goalie in the NHL?
Well, not me, buddy. Not me. I was usually in the bottom. Actually, I have a funny story. I did fitness testing when I was in Rockford, and Wade Brookbank finished 25th in training camp. I finished 27th, and the 26th guy they cut from the team. So that summer he worked out in his garage. He didn't even actually go to the gym. So if Wade Brookbank's watching, he used to hold that one over me all the time.
Dude, who is this guy? His summer program was lifting in his garage.
Yeah, he did. He honestly, he took one more year on his career because his wife was having a baby in the American League because he wanted the insurance because he was stateside.
That is a grit grinder right there.
He was a grocery stick, buddy, right in the middle.
I am not paying for all. You know how expensive training is these days. I'm not paying for that. I'll just lift weights in my garage. What do you have, like 25-pound weights or what?
What a beauty. Yeah, he was one of the best. Fit as goalie. I know Justin Peters was crazy fit when he played. Trying to think back. Not a lot of goalies are like physically like aesthetic, right? You need to see
the pictures of Bob. Like Bob's like so frail and thin, but
it's a weird kind of strength to be a goalie, right? You need to be like flexible and rangy, but then have like unique
mental strength.
And you need to honestly, when I was skinnier, when I would play at like 180, 185 in college and I was not durable. And then when I got to pro, I was a little bit chubbier and 200, but stronger. And I was so much more durable because you're playing a whole game. You need a little more body fat. I thought we were saying goodbye. We're on a whole.
Yeah. Sorry. No,
I love it.
My rule number one to be a goalie, you can't be a pussy. And I'm really disappointed. 51 minutes. I did not ask you about Pete DeBoer hunting down Jake Ottinger, but we'll keep that for next time. Okay.
Sounds good. Save something. Save something.
That was awesome, man. I love that Pete DeBoer hates goalies too. Anyways, that's Carter Hutton. I'm Nick Alberga. Thank you to everybody in the chat at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Back tomorrow with Easton Cowan. Thank you to producer Vic as well. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews. We got clips. We got epic rants by Jay Roseau. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.